Hello, this is Bridget Dalton. I'm at the University of Colorado Boulder and absolutely delighted to have participated in this symposium on the web literacy map. I'd like to introduce virtually my colleague, Blaine Smith at University of Miami. We've collaborated closely on the work that I'm going to be sharing today, and so I wanted to be sure to acknowledge her. You can see Blaine's in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. So the way that I'm thinking about connections to the web literacy map is in relation to a series of studies that Blaine and I have conducted with children and youth composing with multimedia. So I'm going to, Ian, if you could advance to the next slide. All right, so first I think it's very exciting, the work that's going on in terms of collaboratively constructing a web literacy map and really opening it up to all kinds of folks to contribute. I also find the general framework of exploring and building and connecting it quite useful. And what I'm going to do today is focus on the building, the creating for the web, which also connects to participating on the web. So next slide. So as I said, Blaine and I have conducted a series of studies where we're looking at how students collaboratively compose. So they're working with different modes of image and sound and words to create and communicate. And they're also working with various kinds of composing tools. And what we're seeing across these studies is, and this contributes to what we already know about multimodal composition, that certainly students are engaging in a nonlinear and recursive process of composing. We're seeing that oftentimes the design is image-driven with layering of modes. So students are entering in oftentimes with their preferred mode and then layering on different modes so that they're working together to create and communicate the story that they want to represent. The notion of remix, I think, is really essential for this work, and in our studies we're finding that images allow students to remix in ways that provide customization and also reveal, I think, some of their unique talents. Music is, it's like the bass in a band. The music provides the foundation and also pulls it all together and adds a layer of affect to the composition. And then perhaps, again, this is something that we've known, I think, from the early days of research in this area, is that when students are designers in this context. As Cress says, we're all multimodal designers. And for these composers, whether they're upper elementary or middle school or high school, this opportunity to compose is really an important means of both constructing and representing identity, or more appropriately, identities. Over and over we hear from these composers that they want to express their uniqueness and who they are in the context of the particular composing genre and assignment. We're also seeing that students are intentional designers. You know, design is a creative process, and so of course there are things that happen that are unplanned, and emotion as well as cognition are important forces here. But we do see that there are intentions and purposes for design, and students are very aware of what their goals are, who their audience or audiences are, and they're designing for those audiences to entertain, to inform, to persuade, but they're also designing for themselves, wanting to represent who they are. And then we've done much of this work in collaborative pairing for composers. You know, there's a growing body of work that looks at small groups as they're involved, particularly in relation to video composition. But we're finding that having students partner with a friend is revealing the complexity of the collaborative interplay and how the roles vary depending on who the students are, what the tools and modes are that are available to them, and what the genre and the assignment is. Next screen, please. So this is something that Blaine and I have been exploring as a means of both capturing and representing the complex process of multimodal composition. And the reason that I'm sharing it here, as we were talking about web literacy, is I really want to push on expanding the notions of composing and the composing process, so that we don't kind of get bogged down with overly scripted processes, and also to highlight the importance of designing our learning environments, our tools, and our ways of communicating, so that we're thinking about difference, individual difference, partner difference, group difference, and that's for us, for Blaine and me, that's a really important guiding principle. So what you see here are 3 multimodal timescapes where we, for 3 students, Sean and Jamar, Ahmad and Jordan, and Shani and Latanya, these students were creating multimodal retellings of a folk tale. And over the course of 5 sessions, we recorded their on-screen action using Camtasia video, and then we also recorded face-to-face video. So we had their talk and their on-screen movement as they were composing. And what the multimodal timescape does is it reduces that data, it condenses the data and represents it visually, so that patterns emerge that are not apparent necessarily when we try to take process and turn it into words and images, which is what we often do with multimodal transcripts. So what I want you to see here is that these were 3 different pairs of students. They were ranged in age from or grade from grade 5 up through grade 8, and they were, as I said, they were composing a multimodal retelling using the Microsoft Photo Story 3 tool, and they were working with images that they remixed for this purpose, and adding in audio narration, musical soundscape, and text. Typically the text was in the form of screen titles and closings. This was not a written text, but an audio narrated story. So if you look at the 3 graphs, what immediately I think jumps out at you is the entering in through the blue, the dark blue and the light blue. And those represent students' work with image, either searching for images or remixing images. And you see that that's an entry point, and that's a function of the tool. Photo Story 3 requires you to put in at least 1 image before you can add sound or music or text. But then, and then you can see that after image, there's a fair amount of red and pink bars, and that's students' work with the audio narration. And the dark red is when they were talking out loud, formulating how they were going to tell their story, and then the pink is the actual audio recording using that tool within Photo Story 3. And then at the end, as you move to session 5, you can see more attention to music, which is represented in the purple sound bars. But you can also see that there's a lot going on as students progress from day 1 to day 5, with day 5 representing increased modal transversal and going back and forth between image and sound and text and music. So what I want you to take away from looking at these 3 different multimodal timescapes is to recognize that, yes, there are patterns of composition in terms of how students are creating and designing with modes, but that there are really important individual differences in how students enter into and construct their story over time. If you could go to the next slide, Ian. So here, Shawnee and Latanya, this is their folktale. You can see it a little more clearly. And what I want to draw out here is that for these two students, it represents the nonlinearity of the composition process. So if you look at day 2, you can see that students started with scene 9, skipped back to scene 8, skipped all the way to the beginning, scenes 1 and 2, and continued to work on scene 2 for the remainder of that session. If you, on day 3, it was scene 10, 11, 14, 12, 13, 14, and then back to 1. And then when you see perhaps the most concentrated and rapid fire back and forth between scenes is on day 5. So again, what this shows is the fluidity and the recursivity of the composing process. And this is in contrast to some of the structures that are provided for students when they're composing digital video stories or other multimodal compositions. These kids are not writing first and then adding image and then adding audio narration, but they're going back and forth, up and down and across mode and across scene. Another point that's really, I think, important to attend to here is just when you consider the variation across the 3 pairs, and we've now seen this in several different studies that we've conducted, that learner control and freedom within a scaffolded environment really primes students for being successful. Next slide, please. So now I want to make a shift here and focus on another aspect of the way that Mozilla is working to develop web literacies, and that's in relation to the badges that individuals can earn as they create, communicate, and share their skills with others. I think this is how we accelerate and how we take advantage of what everyone has to contribute. And I'm going to, again, push a little bit on what it means to be a knower and a sharer and someone who both inspires and teaches us. So I'm going to set up the next slide for you because a video will play. This is coming from a study that Blaine Smith and I conducted with 2 adolescents who had participated in Blaine's earlier study that was examining multimodal composition in response to the Vietnam era novel, The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. And the students, a group of students conducted this as a part of their last year in high school, and then Blaine reached out to 2 of the students that we thought represented really different kind of composing styles. One was kind of a sound guy, and the other was, as she defined herself, kind of a chaotic, artistic, visual person. And we asked them to compose a composer's cut for us that would represent their unique identities as multimodal composers, and also share their process for creating one of the multimodal products that they had developed as high school students the previous year. So in this next slide, a video is going to play, which is Paul's composer's cut about his informational web page. So what you're seeing now is the actual web page that he composed with his partner and friend Danielle, and this was the first multimodal product that students created, where they chose a topic of interest related to the 1960s, since that was the period of this Vietnam War novel that they were preparing to read. So Paul and Danielle decided that they wanted to focus on civil protest during that time, and they were composing with the website tool Weebly. So to learn more about that original study, I highly recommend Blaine's 2014 study. In order to compose these composer's cut, which are similar in some ways to a director's cut that we've all viewed and experienced with movies and TV shows. So we gave Paul the Camtasia video that represented his on-screen process. So it showed everything that was happening on screen as well as captured his talk during that composing process with his partner Danielle. He also, of course, had access to his website that he created on the Vietnam War protests, and we gave him video of the actual that we had taken of Paul and his partner as they were composing together on during the class web sessions. And then using a digital video program, digital video editing software, he remixed Camtasia video with the web page images and the classroom video, and then he added text overlays and a musical soundtrack to compose this composer's cut. And what I want you to be thinking about is how this composer's cut is influencing you as a viewer and perhaps a potential web designer, and whether you think this composer's cut would earn Paul a Web Literacy Skillshare badge. So the video is about 3 minutes. So I'm going to ask Ian to play that now.
Hold on.
let's come back to the web literacy map in closing here. So as I stated at the outset, I'm really thinking about the building and the connecting phase of this work, although, of course, you saw in both those examples that there was exploring, certainly lots of searching and collecting and curating of content and media. But in thinking about the web literacy map, I think it's essential that we kind of explode or expand out our understanding of what composing is and what counts as composition and communication on the web and with multimedia. The work that we're doing is providing additional evidence that students are engaging in very nonlinear recursive processes of layering and combining modes. We also know that the tools that they're using are mediating that process in combination, of course, with their own preferences and talents and desires that are associated with any creative process. Remix is an essential metaphor for this work and a process. And our understanding of what it means to be original needs to kind of open up and embrace remix as a legitimate and valued form of communication and composition. The third point we want to make is in relation to design and identity construction. Blaine and I have seen this emerge across all of the work that we've been doing with students in classrooms, and if we're serious about recognizing design allows students to both construct and express and communicate identities, multiple identities, then that means we have to design learning environments and tools and learning experiences so that there is room for individual and collaborative pathways of creativity and composition. That doesn't mean that we don't believe in support and structure. We, in designing the digital workshop model that we use, we employ universal design for learning principles and provide scaffolds and structures for students, but always with the overarching goal of allowing multiple pathways to learn and express. And then the final point I want to make in relation to creating for the web is that creating is an aesthetic experience. There are skills involved, and but at the end of the day, when we create, we're engaging in an aesthetic experience, and we want to make sure that as we're developing resources for the web literacy map, that we don't lose sight of this really important aspect of being someone who composes, communicates, and shares on the web. And the next slide, I think this is the next to last slide. And then coming back to Paul and Paul's Composer's Cut in relation to the web literacy Skillshare aspect of the web literacy map, where you can earn badges that reflect your skill and your sharing of that with others. Now, the Composer's Cut, when I asked folks at LRA whether they thought this would count, whether Paul would earn a badge for this, there was lots of head nodding around the room. And I think although their written reflections are always, I think, really useful, especially when the reflections are connected to specific aspects of their composition or their web literacy skill. But again, this Composer's Cut, I think, reflects an innovative way to allow students to speak for themselves and to represent it using media that captures actual process in real time, as well as their retrospective reflection. But in relation to this and thinking about who's a skill sharer, I suggest that we think about this from a critical literacy perspective as well. So when we look to learn from one another and we look to see who has earned badges, I think we should be asking, well, whose voices are heard, whose voices are not heard, and that it would be an important strategy to recruit, to actively recruit, to expand the representation of voices within this Skillshare community. And that leads me to my next point, the importance of positioning children and adolescents as knowers and doers on the web. There's, of course, as educators and researchers, we have a tremendous amount to contribute here. But at the same time, I learned from Paul's Composer's Cut, gained new insights that I hadn't learned from my researcher's perspective and analysis of his compositional work. And then my last point here is that in addition to highly valuing knowledge and skill, I think we also want to value inspiration. And when again, if we revisit Paul's Composer's Cut, I was inspired by how he communicated, what he communicated, and what that revealed about him, but also what it revealed about potential for others to engage in both multimodal composition and the multimedia reflection and sharing of their compositions. So the last slide. So in closing, I want to thank Ian and the Literacy and Technology Committee, and also thank Doug for his expertise and leadership in this area of developing the web literacy map. I think it's a really significant initiative, and I know that Doug is eager to embrace everyone in this contribution and in this work. And on behalf of Blaine Smith, my colleague at the University of Miami, I know we're eager to move forward and to contribute and to participate. So thank you all.